This afternoon, former President John Dramani Mahama is calling for a national dialogue to deliberate on the health of the economy and agree on measures to restructure the country's debts. Ghana's economy is currently facing a credibility crisis, with ratings agency Standard & Poor's downgrading Ghana to a junk status. John Dramani Mahama argues that for government to successfully transform Ghana's economy, they cannot work in isolation. He says the country's best brains must be brought together. So let's bring you excerpts of that statement from John Dramani Mahama, issued about 6 hours ago, indicating that there appears to be no end in sight to the problems with the Ghanaian economy, with the recent downgrade to a C- junk status. The steep depreciation of the Ghana cedi in recent days clearly indicates that the media review of the 2022 budget to win back the confidence of the investor community and the Ghanaian public isn't working. Unfortunately, no credible remedial plans have been put forward by the government to salvage the economy. A national dialogue on the economy, bringing some of our best brains together, will serve us well. Even as we prepare for debt restructuring and negotiation of an IMF program. And of course, a lot of people have been reacting to this. But earlier, the president as well, yesterday, pointing out there that he's confident that the economy will be brought back to its track. Well, he's been speaking about his confidence in his ministers and appointees to bring Ghana back from its economic woes.
Of improving the standards of living of the Ghanaian people. That has to be the main concern. You're developing the economy so that people can have a better standard of living. They can have access to more jobs, they can have access to more produce, they can have access to more goods and services, and generally improve their standard of living. So that is the main goal.
Okay.
And where we are today,
okay.
Cast your mind back. When I came into office, we were under an IMF program.
Yeah.
It's been forgotten today.
Yeah.
When I came into office, we were under an IMF program, and in fact, we had to renegotiate with the IMF the term of that program. And in the end, we were able to come to an end of the program in April 2019.
Exactly.
But so initially, all of these now famous interventions that were made by my government, free senior high school, with the
planting for food and jobs,
planting for food and jobs. All those initiatives were taken at the time of an IMF program.
Okay.
But they were fully launched at that period, and they have become a very successful feature of our governance. I anticipated that to continue, but we ran into some very difficult situations.
Okay.
The first 3.5, 4 years of my first term, on the average, the economy expanded at 7%, sometimes 8% GDP growth per year. Ghana was then depicted as having one of the fastest growing economies in the world.
Okay.
Fast forward to 2021, and the picture changed dramatically.
Okay.
And now our economy, even though it was still positively growing, unlike many other economies, have been severely affected by these exogenous factors. The COVID-19
pandemic. Yeah.
And then subsequently, the war in Europe, which has had a dramatic impact on commodity prices, on fuel prices, on food prices. There are some people who refuse to recognize the truth of this, and they're saying that I am looking for an excuse as to what has happened to the economy. What excuse do I need? When we made the budget in 2021, November, not even a year ago, in November, we made the budget on the principle that we will be paying on the average $64 per barrel of crude.
Okay.
And the budget was constructed around this because, as you know, energy, and we are a net importer of oil, of crude, would have such a major impact on how the economy works. So that calculation is fundamental to the sense of the budget.
Okay.
From January, February, when the war in Europe began, fuel prices, crude oil prices on the open market had been more than 100.
Yeah.
And it's being suggested that this significant, this considerable increase from 60 to 100 would have no impact on our domestic situation. It's had a tremendous impact on our balance of payments.
Okay.
Instead of having to look for monies to pay for the crude oil at 64, the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance is having to look for money to pay for crude, which is over $100 a barrel, and it's been consistently up there since we came. Obviously, that has had a very major negative impact on how our economy is, and it is those developments, food prices, the prices of fertilizer, all of these that have gone through the roof. You are spectators. We're all not just spectators, but we are living these facts on the ground. All of us are aware of these tremendous interventions that have put our economy in the difficulties in which we are. And it is these difficulties, especially on our balance of payments, that led us into renegotiating, re-engaging with the fund to see whether they can help us stabilize our balance of payments so we can take off. But the programs that have been put into place by the government, your Bantampa program, the Ghana Cares program, the post-COVID-19 economic recovery program, are very serious, solid programs that I'm very confident that it will enable us to get back to where we were before. We did it the first term. We did it. Even though we were under an IMF program, and we were able to exit the IMF program in a very solid state. I am very, very convinced, because the people with whom I worked to produce that result are substantially the same people who are helping me now.
Let's take you to some other matters. The Office of the Special Prosecutor has directed the Ghana Revenue Authority to submit an integrity plan aimed at preventing the corruption of the exercise of discretion by officials of the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority. Now, the Office of the Special Prosecutor days ago announced its recovery of some 1 million cedis from LaBianca Company Limited owing to a shortfall in import duties the frozen foods company paid to the state. Now, in a bid to contain any further leakages at the Tema Ports and Habour, the Special Prosecutor is asking the GRA to draw up an integrity plan by the end of this year. Well, let's bring you excerpts of the details contained in that report issued by the Special Prosecutor. Excerpts reading that the Special Prosecutor has directed the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority to submit on or before the 31st of December 2022 an integrity plan to the Office of the Special Prosecutor designed with the aim of preventing the corruption of the exercise of discretion by officials of the Customs Division, especially in respect of rendering of rulings to assure the effective operations of the Customs Act 2015 and the Revenue Administration Act 2016. So it's part of the measures the Special Prosecutor believes will reduce leakages and graft at the Tema Ports and Habour. But the Citizens Movement Against Corruption is equally asking for further measures. Joining us now is Adam Senanu, who's co-chair of that group. Adam, first of all, your initial reactions when we had the announcement from the Office of the Special Prosecutor communicating to us that at least for the first time we're getting some results from the office.
Well, yes. My understanding is that the Special Prosecutor sees a risk of corruption and other ethically unprofessional activities going on there. And so typically an integrity plan is to say, I have self-assessed what the risks are, and these are the measures we are putting in place so that these corrupt acts or ethically unsound practices will not happen and can be contained. I think it's a good way to go, to the extent that the law really mandates the Commissioner General to be responsible. And if he has delegated his responsibility, he has a responsibility to guarantee that power being exercised is not abused.
But then some say this amount that's been retrieved is just a drop in the ocean, and that the special prosecutor should be focused on some more crucial matters. Do you also feel same as citizens moving against graft here in the country?
Well, yes, and thankfully he has said that he's going to do much more in-depth investigation into all previous cases of advance rulings on tax exemption, because clearly that is where there is the potential for people to have, as it were, deprive the state of resources that ought to have come into the public purse. So we are looking forward to what comes out of the additional investigations into all previously, extended tax reductions and exemptions by that office.
And back to the context of why we're here today, the Tema Habour. It appears that that's becoming a leeway for corruption. I'm using that word loosely. You agree?
Well, yes. Anywhere where there's a lot of trade activity, and then when you have human interface, if it's not mainly electronic, so that everything is decided by some system that doesn't have to deal with people. When you start giving people discretion or discretionary powers, the tendency is for this to happen. And so there are some places like the ports that ordinarily we should be keeping a more close eye on, just to ensure that resources that could be available for hospitals, schools, and what have you are not lost into private persons' pockets.
The integrity plan itself, is that the solution to what's happening at the ports? Some say, we need more policy measures to deal with this. But for you, what would the integrity plan deal with?
Well, for all our issues, once they are graft related, usually we would say that multi-pronged approach is the best. So integrity plan by itself, it only helps make sure that the institution is aware of the level of risk and has an action plan in place that says that this is how we manage that risk. Probably one of the ways would also be that one digitizes some of these things, so that there's a system that just identifies that if you are within this threshold, then this applies, or if you are within this context, so that there is a much more objective rather than discretionary approach to it. And above that, in this instance, what I think many of us have not commended enough is a private citizen who takes upon himself to then say, I have noticed this and I'm reporting it. I think we need to bring many more people who are active in the space of the ports on board and say, look, if you're working there and you see things like this, please report. Let's have many more of such cases being reported, such that we can bring down the losses to the state and hopefully not have to borrow or go to the IMF or what have we.
Let's deal with some of the names that have come up. At least we may not mention the names, but the details we're getting, for instance, from that report suggest that some persons of influence, even at the level of the Council of State, are being named in this whole saga. The report says it is unable to establish if indeed La Bianca, as a company, directly belongs to the individual involved. However, given the names that we're hearing of, what do you suggest we do in terms of further investigations on this matter, about the names and persons of influence who may be involved in this?
Well, the portions of the report I've read so far make a very tenuous link between the offense of the reduction in the tax, which we didn't follow the law,
right,
and the entity that was a beneficiary, because it says that they did not apply.
right,
and that's where the catch is. And it makes the action of the customs officer, I mean, even worse, because if they didn't apply for it, why were you extending tax reduction to them?
right.
So from that perspective, it might be a difficult case to prosecute and get any ruling against the company in a court of competent jurisdiction. So I have a feeling not much may happen in this instance in relation to the La Bianca aspect, except to say it is obvious that there must have been a reason why this officer would go to that extent. And it is reasonable when you look at the timing, the coincidence of the timing as well, of the appointment of the lady to the Council of State as well as to the board of GAPUHA. And therefore, this particular instance, there's obviously that overlap and suggestive that, yes, something happened. I think that looking at the other cases where these reductions and exemptions have happened, will probably throw out a pattern that can become a basis for then picking up people at a corporate level who may have applied or have benefited unduly from such, an arrangement. But I can understand why the special prosecutor would tread cautiously on this one, since there's no document to show they applied for the reduction.
The special prosecutor himself has not pointed out to what challenges may be confronting him now, but it's been close to a year, stand to be corrected on this matter, since his appointment. What's your assessment of his performance so far?
I'll say that he's performed, in my view, above average. I mean, creditably. We hadn't seen as much traction when Martin was around, as much as we wanted and had hoped and expected. And so, in the context of the limited resources that he has, we're delighted to note what he's doing. And every time we have opportunity to insist that government needs to extend much more resources to him, and not just to him, we'd like to see the other anti-graft agencies also up and going. Because you see, what will happen is this: citizens will now prefer to lodge complaints with the special prosecutor once it falls under his mandate, because they see the action. And that's one of the fears. Previous Afrobarometer reports have said clearly that Ghanaians are not interested in reporting for two reasons. One, they don't believe that any actions to be taken, and two, that they might get targeted. So if they begin to see actions being taken by some of these institutions, it's a very good thing. And if in the cases where it matters most, the anonymity is being kept, that will further embolden Ghanaians to report these matters.
The recent Afrobarometer reports, plus the one from the UN Office on Crime, also it seems to suggest to us that corruption is rife in some state institutions, particularly the Ghana Police Service. We've seen the police service fight off these claims. And the belief is, by now, the Office of the Special Prosecutor should be acting on some of these reports that were received. You think so?
Sorry, I missed the question. Should we?
Yes. I was pointing to the recent reports we've received. Assessing corruption in the country. The one from the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, pointing to the fact that corruption is rife in some public offices such as the Ghana Police Service. The Afrobarometer report appears to be pointing to same. The belief is the Office of the Special Prosecutor should be acting on some of these findings. You believe so?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, when we're thinking through the establishment of the Special Prosecutor, one of the things we're concerned about was that high-level officers engaged in crime corruption of gargantuan nature, so to speak, was not being, confronted. So we don't want the special prosecutor bogged down by the kind of, the police thing mainly, it's the interface between police, probably MTTU, and citizens on the streets, collecting 20 CDs here, 50 CDs there, 100. No, that's not the kind of thing we want the special prosecutor to be. Ideally, citizens should be reporting to the police hierarchy, and they need to have a system in place to take this on board seriously. Indeed, I was disappointed in the response of the police. You can't have 3 separate professional entities: the Ghana Statistical Service, the Traj, then have CDD. I mean, mind you, the first 2 are on the public sector side, and they have a private sector side. And then say all of these people are making a mistake and have gotten their methodology wrong. I thought that was a real letdown. I mean, what I would have expected was for the police service to engage them on what the findings were, engage them on the methodology, and indicate what they could take out of that and work at. Strategize, embrace them, find out what can be done moving forward. So that was a big letdown, and I'm hoping that Dr. Dampari will review his take on it and make sure that they begin to act on some of the findings.
Anyway, we'll have to leave it here for now. I'm grateful for your time. Adam Sedano, co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Well, the Electricity Company of Ghana is justifying the disconnection of power supply to the Yilo and Manyakrobo municipalities. We'll tell you more about that, but for now, we're taking a short break. We'll be right back.